World War I, the Great War. In this video, we will discuss the outbreak of war in Europe, its causes, and the use of industrial technology in the war. In later videos, we will discuss US entry into the war, the American experience in the battlefields and in the home front, as well as the Versailles Peace Treaty. Origins of the war in Europe. World War I, known at the time as the Great War, was a total war that caused great devastation and destruction across Europe. But what were the causes that led to this terrible war? Historians have identified four main long-term causes for this war, which can be summarized with the acronym MAIN. So let's examine the main causes of World War I. M. Militarism. Militarism is the glorification of the country's military. Military planning and arm races played an important role in pushing European powers towards war. Great Britain had the largest and most powerful navy in the world, and became suspicious when Germany suddenly started expanding its navy capability. At the same time, Germany worried about facing both France and Russia in a possible war, and decided to expand its army to handle the possibility of a two-front war. The military expansion and arm races created tensions that, combined with military pride, would lead to war. A. Alliances. European powers had begun signing alliances in the 1890s, creating two separate systems of alliance. On one side, we had Germany and Austria-Hungary, and on the other, Russia, France, and Great Britain. Although the purpose of these alliances was to keep peace through a balance of power, any dispute involving any of these countries had the potential of getting all of the other countries in the alliance involved, which is exactly what happened. I. Imperialism. After industrialization, there were tensions and economic rivalries among European powers. Germany's rapid industrialization threatened Great Britain's economic supremacy. At the same time, Russia was looking to expand its influence over the Black Sea and the Balkans, threatening Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. Disputes and competition over colonial claims in Asia and Africa also added to the escalating tensions. N. Nationalism. Nationalism refers to national identity and pride, which is often accompanied with a strong belief in one nation's superiority. France and Germany engaged in a bitter rivalry over nationalistic feelings. Empires often encompassed peoples of different ethnicities and national identities. The Ottoman Empire and Austria-Hungary were facing dismemberment as demands for independence from diverse ethnic groups increased. As empires attempted to hold their territories together, fervent tensions arose. The outbreak of war. The spark that started the war was the assassination of Archduke Francis Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. Francis Ferdinand was on an official visit to Sarajevo when he was murdered by Slavic nationalists on June 28, 1914. Austria-Hungary was infuriated and sent an ultimatum with unrealistic demands that Serbia could just not meet. Austria-Hungary proceeded to invade Serbia, initiating a chain of events that would pull all the European powers into war. Russia immediately entered the war because of its alliance to protect Serbia. Germany would then enter the war on Austria's side, and France entered as well, as Russia's ally. Later, Great Britain also declared war against Germany, as the German army invaded neutral Belgium to advance into Paris. In this way, what started as a minor regional crisis escalated into a major European war. Europe went into war divided into two separate alliances. The Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and later the Ottoman Empire, and the Allied Powers, Britain, France, Russia, and later Italy, after it changed sides. Fighting in Europe. The war started in July 1914, and most military leaders were confident that the war would be over by Christmas. They were all wrong. Industrialization had changed warfare forever, and World War I would be a war like they had never seen before. A war with machine guns, poison gas, submarines, airplanes, and tanks. A war that would become a virtual stalemate, with no side able to win, and lasting for more than 4 years. Machine guns were designed for direct, sustained, rapid fire. As German troops crossed Belgium and made their way to northern France, their advance was suddenly stopped by machine gun fire, and neither side was able to advance anymore. Both sides then dug trenches or excavations that extended for hundreds of miles. Trenches were the only way to stop the other side's advance without falling to heavy machine fire. Trenches were separated by a no man's land, often filled with landmines and barbed wire. Soldiers at the trenches faced many problems, such as flooding, loud shelling, rats, lice, and disease. Trenches created a stalemate, a situation in which no side was able to win. Armies sought ways to push the soldiers out of the trenches, using heavy artillery or cannon fire, and even resorting to chemical warfare. The use of mustard and chlorine gas in shells became common, causing severe irritation and even lung damage. Soldiers stuck in the trenches faced asphyxiation if they stayed, and machine gun fire if they decided to leave the trenches. Eventually, the use of gas masks became common in the trenches. German soldiers also resorted to flamethrowers, a weapon that projects a 20-yard jet fire and clouds of smoke in an attempt to force soldiers out of the trenches. Both of these tactics caused severe psychological trauma in soldiers. Tanks were a new technology and were not very effective. They still had mechanical problems, were incredibly noisy, and could potentially become instant death traps due to engine fumes or flammable materials. Tanks were useless to end trench warfare. The North Sea also became another front of battle. Great Britain set out a naval blockade to prevent imports of weapons and food to reach Germany. Germany responded by using U-boats or submarines to surpass the naval blockade and attack ships bringing supplies and weapons to Great Britain. The U-boats used torpedoes that would strike and sink enemy ships. Airplanes were at the time a new technology and did not play a crucial role in this war. However, airplanes were useful in reconnaissance missions to observe and map battlefields and formations from above. A few dogfights also took place. Airmen and Allied pilots engaged in duels in the sky and tried to shoot down enemy planes. The war continued without any real advance on either side, and virtually no change until 1917. In 1917, Russia was facing serious internal problems with the Bolshevik Revolution and was forced to quit the war. That same year, the United States entered the war. In the next video, we will discuss the causes and situations that brought the United States into this European conflict.